In Lesson 210, you will convert between scientific notation and standard form. Scientific notation is a compact way of writing numbers with absolute values that are very large or very small. The form looks like this. It's some number times 10 to some power. This number right here needs to be a number that is greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. Basically, you want one number in front of the decimal point. This number right here tells you how many places you are going to move the decimal point. If it's a positive exponent or a positive power, you're going to move the decimal to the right because it represents a really big number or an absolute value that is really large. And if it's a negative power, you're going to move the decimal to the left because a negative power is going to represent a number that's very small or that has an absolute value that's very small. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change from scientific notation to standard form. Since this exponent is a positive 4, that means we're talking about a large number, so we're going to move the decimal to the right 4 places. And then you'll just drop in some zeros to hold the empty spots. $53,400. Basically, times 10 to the fourth means times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. And you may remember from earlier years being taught that if you multiply by 10, you add a 0, or if you multiply by 100, you add 2 zeros. Well, that was true when you were talking about integers that you were multiplying by 10 or other powers of 10. 5 times 10 is just 50. And 5 times 100, or 5 times 10 times 10, is 500. I don't want you to think about it as adding zeros, though. I want you to think about it as moving the decimal point. Like right now, the decimal in a whole number would be right at the end of it. And if I multiply by 10, I move the decimal one place, which means I add 1 0. Over here, if I multiply by 100 or 10 squared, I'm going to move the decimal 2 places, which means in this case I need to add 2 zeros. Now, adding zeros worked in elementary school, but now when we have numbers like 5 and 34/100ths, you can't just add 4 zeros, you have to move the decimal 4 places. That's probably the biggest mistake kids make in this lesson. If you get the idea of it, of moving the decimal point, you're going to do very well in this unit. In the next example, we have a -3 exponent. So this is going to represent a really tiny number, or a number that has an absolute value that's very tiny. So we're not going to move the decimal to the right this time to make it bigger. We're going to move it to the left to make the number smaller. And then I like to put a 0 in front of the decimal point. We're going to put some zeros to hold the empty spaces. So that was moving it 1, 2, 3 places to the left. You may want to pause the video and try the next 3 on your own. This is a positive exponent, so we're talking about a really big number, so we're going to move the decimal to the right to make it bigger. And then we're going to put in zeros to hold those empty spots. 7, 4, 2, and then we need 3 zeros to hold the places. 742,000. The next example has a negative exponent, so now we're talking about an itty-bitty number. So we're going to make the number smaller by moving the decimal 2 to the left. Put in a 0 to hold the place. 0 and 61 thousandths. And our last example has a positive exponent, so that's going to be for a large number. We're going to move the decimal 2 to the right to make it bigger. 371 and 4/10. Now we're going to go the other way. We're going to take numbers in standard form and we're going to write them in scientific notation. Basically, when you have a whole number The decimal point, if it's not there, it's at the very end, and we want to move it all the way between the first and second number, because remember, you need a number that is at least 1 but less than 10. So I'm going to go ahead and write down 3.725. I don't need to write the zeros. Times 10 to the 3/6 power, and it's going to be positive because this is a really big number. Next up, we have a really itty-bitty number, so we're going to take this decimal point and we're going to move it between the 3 and the 1. That way we have a number that's at least 1, but less than or equal to 10, or sorry, less than 10. So 3.16, or 3/16 times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4th, but it's going to be negative 4th power because we're talking about a little itty-bitty number. Basically, like I said, you want to have exactly one number in front of the decimal point. I like to sometimes think about it as the driver and the passengers. You've got one person behind the steering wheel and everybody else is a passenger. So 3.16 and 3.725. You may want to pause the video and try the next ones on your own. We're going to take the decimal point that's at the end and we're going to move it all the way up here between the 1 and the 4. And then it's going to be times 10 to the 3/6 power, and it's going to be positive since we're talking about a large number. In this next example, we're going to move the decimal between the 8 and the 7. Again, you want to have a number that has exactly one number in front of the decimal point. So 8.76, or 8 and 76 hundredths, times 10, and it's going to be to the negative 3rd power because I moved it 3 places and it was a little number that we were talking about. In our next example, we're going to move it between the two ones. Oops, need my eraser. 1.14, or 1 and 14 hundredths, times 10, and this is another little number, and we moved it 1 place, so to the negative 1st power. Now our very last example is putting some numbers in order from, in this case, greatest to least. These are all in scientific notation over here. So if I wanted to compare them and I want greatest to least, Canada and United Kingdom are going to be the two largest because they are to the 7th power. Since they're both to the same power, I'm going to compare these two numbers right here. And United Kingdom is a little bit larger than Canada. So the greatest is going to be United Kingdom. And then after that would be Canada. And now we want to look at the next two. These both are to the 6th power. So I want to look at these two numbers right here. Mexico is obviously bigger than India. So we're going to go ahead and put Mexico as the next largest. And the smallest would be India.